Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Radcast of the Social Club at the End of the World, focusing on the topic of a new story for humanity. And this is the third Radcast broadcast video conference we're doing of the day. And I wanted to put up on the screen a little screen share of kind of like a picture that we've looked at for the last two Radcasts, which kind of ties all three of them together. The first one was on refreezing the Arctic, the second on radical collective intelligence, and this third one is on a new story for humanity. So let me just do this screen share real quick, show this image, which ties it all together. Okay, so we have the imperative of refreezing the Arctic. Ideally by this summer, really as quickly as possible, right on the brink of extinction, not just of human life, but of all life, if the cascading effects, starting with the final melting and loss of all Arctic ice, once those will trigger so many other tipping points, it's not even funny. So we need engineering solutions for refreezing the Arctic. To develop those engineering solutions, we need radical collective intelligence. And in fact, once radical collective intelligence develops the engineering solutions, that's just the beginning. We need the political and social and cultural solutions to wake people up and activate people, get them into action in terms of forcing the hand of government through a mass popular movement. We need to make this an absolutely mass popular movement to force the hand of government. The good news is radical collective intelligence can help us come up with the social and political and PR and mass movement solutions to get everyone on board. Now, so you see how there's kind of like an arrow going downstream to the right, upstream is to the left. The ultimate upstream point in order to get people to join the radical collective intelligence is we need a new story for humanity. And that's where we are right here on this topic right now. And to put it all together, because so if we look at it from upstream to downstream, the new story will inspire people to get involved and to join the collective effort of co-creating all freezing the Arctic, using those and others to transform politics, culture, and humanity generally. Be on board and make this happen. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm suddenly hearing a lot of static. Adam, I think Adam or Jason, that may be coming from one of you guys. Could you guys mute your microphones, please? Adam and Jason, please mute. Please, thank you, Jason. Adam, please mute your microphone. Adam, please mute your. Thank you, Adam. All right. So with that, I'm going to go on mute myself and open it up to hear folks' ideas and perspectives. Going on mute.
Well, I'm trying to remember where we left off last time we had this conversation. And we had some we were talking a lot about the history of money and things like this. I think, you know, I was sharing how I was sharing the general idea that a new story for humanity can include both a perspective or a frame on our past, all of it, that makes sense for us, that allows us to feel integrated and somewhat complete or resolved or at peace with our past in a way that then lets us be really present and able to really see a clear vision forward. And then of who we are and what we're doing going forward into the future. And I think that's a lot what we were talking about last time.
Totally. Yeah. And just to recap, and I'm going to ask everyone to kind of contribute to this stone soup style, but the story that we came up with last time that integrates and includes all of the past that we've been on, our past trajectory, includes, you know, first we were hunter-gatherers and we were totally in harmony with nature. There were a lot fewer of us, and we were just, you know, like the other plants and animals, we were just part of the ecosystem, and everything was like really cool and in balance, and natural, and all that good stuff. One could argue that was the Garden of Eden. And then we started to mess around with tools, modern agriculture, money, sources of power and energy like fossil fuels, and a new sort of paradigm of life that each of us is separate, and that for each of us to survive and get ahead and be happy, we need to hoard, 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 which is completely diametrically opposite to the old way we used to live when we were hunter-gatherers, and it was all about community and sharing. And the unit of the organism of humanity was not the individual, but the tribe, the collective, the group. Just like the unit for a leafcutter ant colony is not the individual ant. They would survive a matter of hours or days at most, but it's the colony with everyone playing their part. So we started messing around with tools, with money, with sources of energy, and with this new paradigm and modern agriculture, and divvying everything up and hoarding as much as I can for myself, whether it's land, women, livestock, you name it. And that combination of tools, money, power sources, modern agriculture, and a new paradigm and modality of life set us off on this roller coaster ride of rapid population growth and rapid transformation and ultimately destruction of the biosphere and of life on Earth. So it's been this, it looked like we were going up. Oh, wow, oh, great, this is cool. Got all these tools and all this cool stuff, but now we're just falling off the edge of a cliff. So the story is of a roller coaster ride. Now we're on this descent, and we need to pull out of it. We need to pull out of the nosedive, and refreezing the Arctic is the first step towards pulling out of that nosedive. But to get there, we got to go upstream to a new story for humanity, radical collective intelligence, etc. So the part of the story that basically goes from this treacherous moment that we're at now towards pulling out is a story of humanity coming together, co-creating radical collective intelligence, and co-creating all the solutions that we need: engineering, social, political, financial, cultural, media, memes, PR, all the above. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there as a starting of the stone soup process. What would you like to add to this story? Going on mute.
Well, one thing I just want to point out too is there's that point early in the story where we're talking about, once upon a time, everything was kind of perfect, or that's the story we have, at least. We don't know if it was really perfect because we were fighting saber-toothed tigers and tribes were fighting each other before they had tools, and there's still a lot of hoarding of things, probably, because like all the animals out there, they're all fighting for survival. And then we started messing around with tools, and that's true. But the point I think also is like there's a very subtle nuance there of that we all know this about, that at some point there was a major turning point from us being a certain kind of species that was kind of basically living on the land and operating in small tribal movements, to then we started messing around with tools and agriculture and all these things that really started changing things rapidly. That was the beginning of civilization. I guess the question is, like, we all kind of know that happened, but then there's a mix of perspective and story around, because I think there's I kind of sense there's like a lot of misunderstanding for us now, as in this modern age, of kind of going back, how did we get here? And we look back to we made some turn, and was it a lot of, we kind of think maybe it was a wrong turn. Well, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but the thing is, like, that needs to be part of this. Like, there's the story of we did that, but there's also the story of why did that happen. I think that's really key in order for us to really integrate and be able to fully have all our energy going for, like, you know what, that was a really wrong mistake, and we understand exactly why we made that mistake. Let's move on. Or, you know what, we made that turn because of actually a much higher purpose that we weren't able to see at that time, and we're perfectly clear on that. Now let's move on. But like, there's kind of this hanging point of somehow humanity fucked up, or somehow we weren't, something weird happened. I think that kind of like that incoherency of meaning around it, I think is still hanging us up from moving forward fully. And I don't necessarily know the answer. Like I have my own perspective around it. Yet I think a larger question is how do we all come together? Like, you know, how do 7 billion people come together and have some kind of coherent understanding together of what's happened and why we're at and where we're going? That's my question.
I want to try to figure out, Jamin, whether we're talking about trying to create like a visual representation, like an actual storyline in somewhat of a type of something that can be used in a PR marketing type of way. Is that why we're trying to generate a story? Yes.
Yes, and it's not the only reason. It's one of many reasons, but that's one of them, definitely.
Okay. I feel like we can all go on and spill our guts about what we think the story looks like. I think I generally agree with, I'm sorry, I haven't met Guy who was just talking, but
Michael Gallo. Michael,
yeah. We probably generally agree.
Here, Jason, yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with, Jamin and, I think that we need to find the commonality of being humans and having been sort of responsible, implicit, even without, being responsible, even though we don't really realize it, for this catastrophe that's coming. And that now we really need to band together. And, whereas we were using all these technologies in the past sort of in the wrong way, we need to find a way to use technologies in the right way to sort of save and scrap the situation. When I think about visual representations, I think about these Steve Cuts. Does Steve Cuts mean anything to anybody here? He does these little videos online. One is called Humanity. Let me just pull one up for you guys. Can you all see this?
Yes, Jason, carry on.
All right. Have you seen this before?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I haven't.
So anyway, I won't make you watch the whole thing. I guess I just wanted to show you that I thought that if you take a look at these, he's got other ones too, like where all these people are looking down at their cell phones and are just completely zombified by like modern culture and technology. And it makes me think about radical collective intelligence, trying to get people who are all sucked into their phones to use basically use technology as a way to interface with people to solve the actual problems that we face. But maybe even reaching out to a guy like Steve Cuts, because he's already working on talking about environmental things and saying, hey, we got a solution to this. So maybe since you always say, hey, go do it, I guess I should try to reach out to Steve Cuts.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Go for it, Jason.
Okay, good. And so, I mean, maybe, he could either build one for this exact purpose, or maybe even an outside person could just, I think his stuff's on there for free. Maybe someone can just chop them up and use them with, putting sound over it and use it for our own narration. Like if he says it's open source, like maybe ask him first. And if he says it can be used, if somebody else is good with editing, they could theoretically use these, because there's other videos online that use his graphics. And it seems to be that he just lets it open source out there. And so people could theoretically pull it together from there too, with another idea. If he's doesn't want to be involved, I'm saying, for instance, or wants to be paid.
No, these are great ideas for getting the message out there, right? This is a great conversation about the medium for getting the message out there. So, and we'll definitely be developing that, because we need to get the message out there via multiple media. But what is, so shifting gears, back to what is the core message? What is the, you know how like any really great story, you can convey the essence of it in about half a minute, right? You can boil it down. So, and this leads back to, you know, to Michael, what Michael was saying about the wrong turn that humanity made, because we definitely made a wrong turn somewhere, or did we? And if so, what was it? Because if you look at, you know, what we were talking about, the, you know, the narrative of how we got to where we are, and the overshoot, and messing around with too much power and tools and hoarding and all this stuff, you know, how we got to where we are. Yes, there's all this death and destruction caused by the path that we've been on, but at the same time, there's also a lot of positives. Now we've got all this technology and communication, and we can do things that we couldn't do before. We can come together in ways that we couldn't before. And so it's kind of like, now that we've gotten to the brink, we've got this limited window of time where the technological explosion has given us all these capabilities. So we've got a limited window of time to use these capabilities before the path that we're on ultimately kills us all. So can we snatch victory from the jaws of defeat in the last scenes of the James Bond movie? And that's where we're at right now. And what, you know, my fundamental thesis about this is we can come up with a tight story that's super inspiring, that both gives us that cathartic release from our mistakes of the past, that basically says, okay, wow, I see where we went wrong, and I see all the damage that's been done, and I also see a path forward for us. I'm in. Let's do this. Right? That's what we need. That's the essence of the story that we need, and we need to fill in the details. But you guys see where I'm coming from? Are you guys with me?
Yeah, I see it totally. I'd like to share something too. I'm going to just share my screen really quick. Let me know. Can you guys see my screen? This is a website.
Yes, we can. Yeah,
Great Transition Stories. This is a website called Great Transition Stories by initiated by Dwayne Elgin, who's who I've known for a long time. Dwayne's been an amazing voice, both in the ecological and in 70s. You know, near the end of his life, he's been focusing a lot on, again, this kind of like seed element of the moment we're at in human history of really coming to terms with our story. And this wiki kind of outlines, you know, many different narratives, many different frames of looking at, you know, possible ways of looking at what we've been doing and where we can be going. And something for us to consider kind of as a resource, because he's put a lot of thought into it. I think, you know, that a lot, I've looked at this website somewhat carefully, and you know, a lot of the there's like, it's, you know, it's got a list here of 13 great transition stories that, you know, we be familiar with. We've seen a lot of these before, but they're just kind of like outlining them clearly. And I think a lot of them kind of overlap in this idea that we're kind of becoming more than what we were, basically. You know, something's happening now that's allowing us to become something new. You know, that we're kind of part of a broader evolutionary story that even maybe precedes humanity in some sense. And you know, whether, you know, whether we, you know, choose one of these or something completely unique outside of these, or we weave some of them together into a single narrative, I think something like this can be helpful.
Totally. Yeah. So let's definitely leverage all these resources. And leveraging this resource that we're all here right now in this conversation, I propose we kind of brainstorm a little bit about, what could be that story, or the nut of the story, the essence of the story, the seed of the story, right? I mean, for me, it definitely, involves something about the past, something about how we got to where we are, because we're really at the brink right now. And then, but I think really what's the battle of this story process will be won or lost on whether we're able to come up with something inspiring. It's like humanity did this, did that, blah, blah, blah. We got to where we are. Now we're at the brink with all this great information and communication technologies. And then, some people started to wake up, and some people started to realize that, hey, we all need to come together and operate at a vastly higher level of intelligence. Here's the way that we can do that. People are coming together. It needs to be a story of people are coming together, right? Think of Paul Revere. Paul Revere had a 4-word story. The British are coming. It talked about what's happening here and now. Those 4 words don't really go a lot into the past of how we got here, but it's in other words, we need to come up with a meme that people can spread. Like, wow, there's this group that's got together, and they're figuring out how to refreeze the Arctic using a new form of intelligence. I mean, that's inspiring, right? Or there's this movement that's building to solve all the world's problems holistically, starting with refreezing the Arctic, right? So we need this rah, not so much a PhD thesis that goes into chapter upon chapter of how we got here, but a story that can just spread and go viral and inspire.
I agree. Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. It seems like saving the world might be the story, and so that and also I wanted to put a little story out that I've actually got a 55-page manuscript written on my theory that money is a poison, but I have an anecdote I'm going to write in there, and it so the way I've done a lot of study. I've read books on anthropology and started out a long time ago reading the Jean Auel Clan of the Cave Bear novels, and she did a lot of research, and so this is the way I see it. A long time ago, back when mankind was hunters and gatherers, they lived, basically like in the Garden of Eden all over the world. And they would get together in the summers. They would have gatherings so that, they could trade stuff, and so that their people could intermingle, and they wouldn't be, having ancestral relationships and stuff in their little clans and tribes. So that they would mix it up like that, so get together. And then they would get together, and while they were at these summer get-togethers, the elders, the wise men or people and women would get together, and they would have a little group, and they would go up on top of the hill, and they would look down on the valley over their people and talk about it, And they lived by this premise, and this is pretty widely spread among the Indians and stuff, that they made major decisions based on 7 generations into the future. And so they lived like this, and then something happens, we go through a mini ice age or something like that. And the people get, food gets scarce. So they said, okay, we're going to break the rule. We're going to start planting, and we're going to start herding. We're going to pen some fish stocks. So they start doing that, and then all of a sudden it gets warmer again, and now all of a sudden they've got lots of food, and they come for a southern summer gathering, and they see that the world, that their land now, their gathering place is really crowded. And so they look down and they say, well, now we've got so many people that we have to work, we have to plant, we have to do these things and in order to survive. And so their populations grow, and Guy McPherson calls it population overshoot, and that's what happens. And so we go through these periods where we gain in technology or knowledge, and we overshoot. And the last area that we gained in knowledge was when we developed the internal combustion engine, and we started taking oil out of the ground. And that's the point where the Industrial Revolution happened. The combine machines were made, and they were able to produce massive crops. That's it. And they had alternating current electricity. And this is all new to mankind. And it caused the population to explode. I mean, absolutely explode. And so that's kind of how I see it happen. I also put in that, at some point way back a long time ago, they started using money, and that's where. And now you have oil and money combined. So anyway, I'm going where I didn't want to go. So I'll stop there.
I introduced the idea on our last call that one way I hold the perspective, and I referred to I'm going to share my screen again. I'd referred to this video, which is one of my favorite videos to share overall. I've been sharing it for years, The 4 Pillars of a Decentralized Society. And he tells a little bit of a story. It's not the best storytelling, but he kind of gives a perspective that, what we're already talking about. And that basically this one 2,000-year era of centralization, where we were, basically living through a corrupt civilization that we're still coming out of now. That was kind of necessary because the population was growing, similar to what you're saying, Adam, that both because population was growing is why we entered that darker era. The darker era also increased our population. And so my perspective is that, and I think part of what a healthy story for humanity can be is that we needed to, the whole point of the human population was that we need a certain amount of people on the planet in order to catalyze something like a global brain or to catalyze and realize a collective intelligence that hadn't existed on the planet yet. And that's what we're coming into now. And if we look backwards, that in order for us to have this scale of 7 billion people on the planet all connected in a way that wasn't possible back in the hunter-gatherer days, that in order to have that technology that can connect us in this way that we're now building right now with Radish, and it's being exercised in other ways, in order to have that technology, we also had to have all the previous technologies, including the Industrial Revolution, including the oil at that point. We don't necessarily need to go forward. We can now have new solutions. I'm just saying that part of framing the story could be that all these things were really hard, and they were big mistakes that we had to learn along the way. But in the greater scope of things, that we had to go through these hard lessons in order to realize a greater scale of collective intelligence that probably couldn't have been realized in any other way. And that's what I'm proposing, is that, especially for Radish, if we're going to have one particular kind of story, we make into some kind of animation or something like that, that maybe that could be part of it, is kind of showing in a story way, not necessarily making it entirely informational, but in a real story that kind of captures the essence that we moved from something into a dark period, and that dark period was necessary in order for us to come out in a much more significant way later. And that's the essence of what I'm proposing. What does everyone think about that?
I'll jump in here and comment. I think it's very important for us to realize there are 7.7 billion. I don't know what it is today. It goes up by, what they say, it goes up by 250,000 people per day. So anyway, there's a faith keeper of the Haudenosaunee, or the Iroquois. We say Iroquois. You say Iroquois Confederacy in New York State, eastern Canada, and Oren Lyons is the faith keeper, and I think he said that human population, if you weighed us and you took that cumulative weight, and compare it to the weight of all the elephants, the rhinos, the bears, the whales, and you name it, all other life on Earth, we're like, it's a crazy number. I could be wrong, but it seems to me he said something like 90% of the weight of mammals would be us. So yeah, we really overshot seriously. But the thing is, we have to realize that it's the situation we're in, and we have to realize that all human life has intrinsic worth, the creator given worth. And so I hear what you're saying, Michael. We have to say, all right, now we've got to mobilize these people. We have to mobilize all this intrinsic worth and no longer be directed by these oligarchs that continue to have ever more increasing concentration of wealth. So the story, the byline I would suggest is, Jamin, it's love is the answer. And I'm borrowing from Todd Rundgren, who wrote the song, Love is the Answer. And now love is a nebulous word, but when you think about it, there are so many songs, so many pieces of work, so much poetry related to the word love that you can't go wrong with grabbing that and saying, at the end of the day, how we're going to get this planet back on its even keel is love is the answer. And, I could go into a lot of conversation about, exploring what that word really means, but, just suffice to say, it's a reality. And just to talk about that story further, there's a context. Everybody has a unique context. There's going to be a love is the answer Shasta Mountain context, a Long Beach context. And I'm working in Canada, and I've been moving forward probably faster than maybe sometimes I should, handing out invitations to this project that I've talked about. And in fact, what I have on the screen right now is, I'm taking Radish with me because you guys motivate me to do something. And at the end of the day, whatever we're doing, whether it's something in Long Beach or Shasta Mountain or Olympia, Washington, at least we can say, hey, we weren't asleep. We were trying to do something. Like Michael Rupert, this gentleman I just discovered last week. I don't know where he was in my life, but the man is quite a phenomenal individual. Sadly, he apparently committed suicide. But one of the things he mentions in a video that I just recently watched is that he says there's three groups of people on the Titanic. There are the deer in the headlights people that don't know what the heck to do. The Titanic has hit an iceberg. It's starting to take on water. And there's a lot of people that just don't know what to do, right? And then there's people like us who are saying, okay, let's jump to it. There's not enough lifeboats. Well, how do we build some more lifeboats? What are we going to do here? We got to start engineering something. And then there's the third group of people that say, oh, no, don't worry. It's the Titanic. It's unsinkable. And, honestly, I don't know. There must be way too many of those people. As I said, it boggles my mind, the arguments that we're having here north of the border about building multi-billion-dollar pipelines to actually exacerbate the whole problem. The discussion of spending money on Winter Olympics. It's just ludicrous, right? These are the people that are, I guess they think that the Titanic can't sink. So, I'm doing my little initiative up here, and I'm taking you guys with me. And as you know, Jamin, last week I was popping in and out. I had us down at this event, and one of the things I did, I mentioned it briefly, but I also put a comment in one of the videos. But I actually I got this old globe from National Geographic, and I'm not sure how well it shows up here in the light. But I was talking to a gentleman named Nathan, Natan. It's not Nathan, it's Nathan, no H in it. Last name Obed. He is the leader of all of the people who live in the Northwest Territories. So if it's not too much brightness on this thing, all the way from the Alaska border, all the way across Hudson's Bay, and right across northern Quebec and Labrador. I talked to this man and I told him, I asked him if he was concerned about abrupt climate change. And he said, definitely is. I said, well, I'm talking to these people of an organization called Radical Collective Intelligence, and they're trying to figure out ways to refreeze the Arctic. Would you like to be kept apprised? And he said, yes, I would. So it was a very brief conversation, but it's the type of thing that once we can get the ball rolling and we start, for whatever we can do, I don't know, it's a race to the finish, right? But at least again, we can start beating the drums and talking it up. I'm going to this Grassroots 3 event next week, and it involves, just a quick description here. We've invited members of the community to join us at Grassroots Gathering 3, April 26th, 27th in Calgary, moving forward with action. So that these are Indigenous people, various of Treaty 7, and going to be talking with elders on the Grassroots Gathering 2 journey to reconcile. It starts with each of us as individuals, and then connecting with ourselves, our families, our land, and our resources to have the most community influence on our lives. So again, mixing it up, and I'll go there and I'll start talking up Radish again with people there, and creating some controversy probably. I think I have created some controversy already with respect to this initiative that I'm handing out some invitations to, maybe prematurely, because the other day somebody looked at it and they told me this is problematic, and I said, okay, well, give it back to me if it's too troubling for you. But I call it Project Alberta, an invitation, how to dismantle an atomic bomb. And the reason I'm doing this is because my wife is a big fan of U2. Now she, one of the big issues that I've decided is man brain. That's the problem, and I didn't come up with that phrase, but I honestly, and our man brains are actually lacking a little bit of something, because we don't often think through what we're doing, right? We don't have that. There's a feminine intelligence that is a moderating effect that has been completely repressed for the past 2,000 years. And so this is where I'm, another reason for mentioning the U2 is that the Edge himself, he said this not too long ago. I could dig up the quote. He said, men have been running the world for too long, and it's time to give the women the leadership roles. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. And this is the connection. Now, people will think I'm losing my brains, right? Because I'm saying, yeah, I want to bring you to Calgary. People would say, well, that's crazy. Well, yeah, so is refreezing the Arctic. But we have to get a little crazy, to quote that singer-songwriter Seal, who says, there's a song, get crazy. And we do. If we're going to get moving on this, we got to stir it up and get moving, create the buzz, and then get into the engineering at the same time. So with that, I'll just pause.
So Miles, you've hit on a lot of different points, and some of them have to do with the medium. Like, I'm going to this meeting next week, and here's information about the meeting. I would put that in the category of the medium. How do we get the story out? How do we get the message out? What I'd like to propose, so that we get a bit more focus, is that we focus on the message. What is the story? So I'd like to ask Michael Gayo, if you would, to kind of maybe recap and get us back on track as to what you were talking about because I'd like to get on that thread. Let's really refine the message. If we've got a good message, then we can blast it out through all these different media and it'll go, right? But if we don't have the message down, we can go to all the meetings we want and it'll be more of the same. So go ahead, Gaio, if you're ready.
Sure, you bet. Thanks, Jamin. Yeah, I think, Jason had brought up the question earlier of, what is this? Are we talking about, just are we philosophizing what story is? Are we talking about something very particular for Radish? And I think, we can have both those conversations, but I think we're really interested in, like, maybe, I think there's an implied focus that we're going to want to create some kind of story, be part of Radish's branding in some sense that can encapsulate a broader perspective. And, again, looking at, a lot of the work that other people have already done, like Dwayne Elgin on this website of the Great Transition Stories. I invite everyone, here to take a look at this, because almost everything we're talking about is probably included here. There's these different perspectives. I like this global brain awakens. Like, this is a certain frame that I think might be helpful for especially us as Radish. That that we take the perspective that basically that the global organism is becoming something greater than what it was, and the humans have a very key role to play in that, and that we're there now. Basically, we've got the population. We definitely, whether we've overshot population or not, we've definitely got enough numbers, and we've got the technology to connect us all in really amazing ways, and using artificial intelligence now and all that to realize a greater type of intelligence that's never been on this planet before. And that can definitely be part of the story going forward, especially for Radish. Now, maybe everyone's not going to agree with that story. Again, if we go back, there's all these different kinds of stories, including there's even a story here that's about a path of gender reconciliation, for people who are really in that story about the difference between males and females. And there's a lot of different stories, but I'm thinking some really work for the Radish telos, and that we're literally trying to create this global brain. So it seems like that would make sense to have that be part of our story going forward. And then going backwards is, how do we tell the story going backwards too? And again, it makes sense to me that one way we can frame it, and there might be more than one way, but one way is that at some point we took this turn into decisions of agriculture and society and money and everything that came after, in order to come to this place where we can have the technologies and the population scale in order to realize collective intelligence. And that's currently where I'm resting as a general thread of a story that could be more laid out in detail. But I'm just introducing that now. So what do you all think about that?
I love it. I love it, Michael, because it encapsulates it. You see, it synthesizes and encapsulates all of our past into basically one word: overshoot. Right? We've overshot. Okay, now that we've overshot, we can either prepare to die, a very painful death, or we can leverage one of the byproducts of this overshoot, which is now we got 7.5 billion people, and information and communication technology. So if you look at both of those as products of the overshoot, way too many people and all this ICT, information and communication technologies. Well, just like the Reese's peanut butter ad from the 70s, if you put chocolate and peanut butter together, you get something new, which is really powerful. So all these people connecting to each other, wow, now we've got a global brain. And with this global brain, using not just our intelligence, but artificial intelligence, yet another byproduct of the overshoot, we can accomplish fundamentally two things. Number one, it unites us together into a whole, humanity as a whole, instead of a bunch of individuals competing with each other to destroy Mother Earth and Horde. We come together as a whole, as one humanity, and work together to save life on Earth. That's really beautiful. So it enables us to unify, to unite, And then once united, we can come up with so many solutions to solve our problems and allow life to continue. Now, once we solve our problems and life can continue, operating as a much more intelligent whole than a bunch of individuals competing with each other and essentially canceling out our collective intelligence. Once people are working together as a united whole, we as a whole can decide, do we want to reduce our numbers? Do we want to expand our numbers? And in each of those scenarios, what's the end goal? What's the end game? What are we trying to accomplish? But it will really truly be a we, because we're united. And so anyway, what I love about the story that you're putting together, Michael, is that it explains the past in one word, overshoot, and then it says, now let's leverage this overshoot in positive ways. We can either just go with the flow and let it just continue to destroy everything, or we can leverage it and make a 90-degree turn and go from down to up through radical collective intelligence, refreezing the Arctic, cleaning up the oceans, and doing all these things that our collective intelligence can enable us to do if we're willing to come together and basically get with the news story, get with the program. Go on mute.
The only thing I would just ask that maybe be considered is that the word overshoot defines the problem, which is fine, but I think psychologically it's better to give people a positive. And what is the goal? Like we know overshoot's the problem, but is it balance? Is it harmony? What, in other words, what is the destination? Because we know we're in overshoot, which is the negative.
Right. Well, see, the cool thing is, think of the story of someone was given a lemon and they're like, oh crap, I got a lemon. Oh, I can make lemonade. So it's like, we got overshoot. Overshoot's a reality and it appears to be a negative. This is a way for us to make lemonade out of the overshoot, turn it into something positive by leveraging it and its derivative outcomes of information and communication technologies being a huge one. And all these people everywhere. Well, wow, all these people have all these different perspectives. The information and communication technologies brings us all together, and we're able to create something way more positive and amazing. And so I'd say let's definitely call a spade and say, look, we've overshot relative, and life, the world is dying. So you got overshoot and mass death, and that's the reality that can be the part of the story that kind of jolts people awake. And it's like, whoa, how many stories start with a tragedy? Start with a very negative situation. In our case, it's a bad situation that's getting worse and worse and worse very quickly. Boom. Now we leverage that, what appeared to be a pure negative, overshoot and death. We can actually leverage the overshoot to turn it into something positive. So I think we're getting close to the story. Frankly, that's how it feels to me. Onward.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Miles. I think I think it can be a mix of acknowledging the problem, and in this case, it's been not just the problems that have caused the suffering, but also the suffering itself is a problem. Acknowledging the state we're in, but really presenting the clear motion forward. Because I mean, that's a lot what we're seeing right now. Like our main storytelling mechanism right now for our population is Facebook, basically. And Facebook's not a story information machine. It's basically providing a lot of fragmented views of where we're at and how to move forward, but there's nothing coherent about it. It's mostly just people presenting a lot of problems. That's pretty much all that's happening, and there's very little insight forward. So we're definitely all clear on the problems. And I agree. I think that human psychology is tricky, though. Human psychology, it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like an equation. Human psychology, if we give just a positive view, then there also could be a reaction like, well, wait, what about the problems? And so I think it's a combination of both presenting the problem in a real way and presenting a solution. I'm going to just read a really short line from this book I'm reading right now, by my good friend Jay Golden, called Retellable, and he's somewhat of a story expert, and he just says that a story is a problem approached in an interesting way that makes us care. So we need to we need to care. We need to have a positive view so that people we can approach this big problem we have, but in an interesting way. And I certainly say that the Radish approach is very interesting, and it seems to make a lot of sense, really. We're basically making lemonade out of lemons, as Jamin said, and so to present that in a way that people also care could be a third element too.
Great stuff. Great stuff.
Hey, Jamin.
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to add something there. Miles said something about saying it in a nice way. That overshoot might not be a good word. I kind of like that. And then, so it seems like we need something like how to save the world is a good way of kind of looking at it. And, that we want to create a sustainable life. And in that regards, when I hear you talk to Guy McPherson and stuff, you do a lot of talking about saving, putting it into the nuclear power plants because we want complex life to be able to survive on the planet. And I just think that mankind needs more than that. We need some hope, and I just don't think that's a very enlightening perspective. Okay, we're all going to die, so we're going to save. I mean, I think we need to go for everybody gets saved. We save as many as we can. We use our technology and our knowledge and wisdom, and we make the best decisions. If it's geoengineering is required, we do that. And we shoot for saving everybody. That's my opinion.
I like it. I like it.
I like it. I like it too. I like it too. Yeah. Go ahead, Guy.
Oh, I like it. I think we have enough uncertainty and doubt in the world, and we just need to pick a really positive, clear narrative story and just really stick with it. And why not? Why not go for saving everyone and just getting, maybe we'll make it through. Maybe it's just going to be way better than we ever even imagined. Why not? Why not have that perspective? I know personally that works in my life. Even in my own life, we can do this even for ourselves as individuals. We all have our own past. We all have challenges and traumas and events that all happen in our paths, and then sometimes we play those stories over and over and over again that think we're this certain way, and that it kind of shadows our future. And we can take the responsibility in our own lives to reframe our past and reframe our present and look at the future in a way that's completely open to new possibilities. And I've experienced in my own life when I do that, it's amazing how there seems to be some kind of intelligence already here in reality that will work, that we can participate with when we're able to yield our conscious attention and craft a perspective for ourselves, like an intention, and move forward in that. It's interesting how often the reality will respond and support those positive intentions. So I think by having a collective vision that way, it could be really interesting to see what kind of magic can happen.
Yeah, inspired by what Adam just said and what you just said, Michael, I just want to tell one on myself. which is that whereas yesterday I was on these video conferences with Guy McPherson and we're talking about, yeah, we've got to shut down nuclear because, as civilization approaches the brink of collapse, all these nuclear power plants could go Fukushima at the same time and totally wipe out the atmosphere and destroy the possibility of life on Earth in the future. So therefore, we've got our mission. We got to shut down nuclear even as we make our exit. But, even though that may make a lot of sense to me, that is not a story that's going to inspire humanity into collective action. Oh, we're all going to die. Okay, I'm just going to assimilate that and then say, okay, since we're all going to die, let's do something positive before we die, shut down nuclear so that life can continue. Complex life can continue even if we're not going to be a part of it.
Right.
I don't think humanity is terribly well wired to get inspired by that kind of story. Go on you.
Yeah, and even if that was the plan, I think most of humanity wouldn't get behind it. They're going to want to run those power plants to squeeze every dollar out of them in order to buy an extra foot on their yacht to sail right up to the end of the world. That's the way that most people would want to do it anyways. So, yeah.
Yeah, you guys got it. You got exactly what I was talking about. Thanks. I wonder if Miles has anything to say about it, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I think whatever we come to agreement on, or at the end of the day, it's Jamin and Michael and company to decide on this story for Radish. And they've got a lot of great ideas, as just expressed, and it just occurred to me as well, the other one that you have, Jamin, the compassionate, caring companies, in a sense, boy, those words also would work well with the story of Radish, because that's what it's about at the end of the day, is building that, getting that energy, a constructive energy from compassion. And so you move forward with that story about what Radish is, which you have well documented already. It's all the videos that you've done sketching out the concepts of swarming and gathering, indexing, and the collective whole Earth idea. Right there, the whole Earth. Why not go with that one in a sense? Because again, what I'm contending with is you guys get this software going, and then you're going to continue to further my causes, or I don't like to say my causes because there's vacuuming up other people's ideas and trying to make sure that I give people attribution. But again, there's a context I have in Canada, which is different than yours. So for example, yeah, I'm all about refreezing the Arctic, but what we'll have to do has to be the Canadian context to get those resources mobilized. The permitting and the governance is different. In Alaska, you'll have your American legislation to contend with and permitting process. So there, at the end of the day, there's all these great projects that can feed towards refreezing the Arctic, but they have to be done in a particular context all the time. And so that's where I see, like, for example, this is a kind of an overview of what I've sketched out. But again, it's a Canadian context, and it's not mine because so many of these icons are indigenously inspired. But in Canada, we have a serious issue with respect to the First Nations land claims and land rights are still an issue to be tackled. So, for example, in British Columbia, there are not very many treaties that actually cover the sovereignty of the First Nations. So, in a sense, they can argue in the United Nations that they own British Columbia for the most part. The reason I bring that up is because these political issues have to be attended to, at the same time, as we move forward in the concept of the collective intelligence. So I just thought I'd toss that in.
Well, I think we're approaching the end of, we're about at an hour now, 1:15. I think we've really hit on a key concept. My biggest takeaway from this meeting is no child left behind. The story that we come up with has to be one that includes all of humanity, and basically all of us making it. And, you know, you think about it, why the heck not, right? Human beings do not have to have this massive footprint, right, that we're having on the biosphere right now. Especially as we come together and leverage our collective intelligence, we're going to come up with so many solutions, not just for big macro things that are far from our homes, like refreezing the Arctic way out north or cleaning up the oceans way in the middle of the Pacific, but also things that have to do directly with our home and our entire set of living arrangements, because that's, in some sense, the engine of all this destruction is our living arrangements and the extent to which we fly everywhere and drive everywhere and all that. And so I think the new story that's crystallizing for me is, you know, we overshot and it looked like that was just pure negative. But then we realized, wow, with all these people and all this technology, we can come together and create a global brain, create a new higher level of vastly higher form of intelligence, as well as a really satisfying modality of life of contribution, collaboration, symbiosis, and unity. And that we leveraged all this higher form of intelligence and our tool using abilities and all that, tool creation abilities, to co-create all the solutions, think tools, all the tools that we need in order to transform all of life on Earth, from everything from the big macro geoengineering projects of refreezing the Arctic to right here at home and you know, building sustainable lifestyles and communities. So I think that is that's the new story that we need to build. Overshoot, it looked like it was all bad, and there's certainly bad things in it. And of course, that helps us acknowledge the bad and deal with the bad and deal with the tragedy. But surprise, you know, at the you know, well, I'm repeating myself, but that overshoot, you know, created the possibility for this new amazing modality and this new utopia, and that's what we're on the path towards. So everyone get on board, kind of thing. Going on mute.
Thanks, Jamin. Yeah, there's a story. I hope I can remember it correctly. Some old story about an older man who lives in a village, and he has a small farm. And one day, his horse runs away over the plains, and all the village people come together. Oh God, we're so sorry. What an unfortunate thing that your horse ran away. And he's like, you know, I don't think it's unfortunate. You know, it's just my horse ran away. And then, you know, they're like, oh God, you know, he's so delusional. And then the next day, the horse comes back, and it has a it brought back it dragged along like a bush of fruit with it, all this amazing like ripe fruit. And they're like, oh my God, you're all the villagers come like, you're so lucky. My God, look at your luck. Your horse came back with all this fruit. Now you're in abundance. He's like, you know, it's just what it is. My horse came back with fruit, you know. And then the next day, you know, he was feeding his family, and his son was eating the fruit, and his son gets really, really sick because some of the fruit was poisoned or bad. And like, oh, listen, this is so bad, so bad, so bad. He's like, you know, I don't know, you know, it's just what it is. And then the next day, there's a war in their state, and the generals come to the town to take out every son of every family and put them on the front line. And they all go, and they all die. but his son didn't go because he was sick, and they excluded him. They're like, oh my God, you're so fortunate. You're so fortunate. Your son was sick. So, you know, it goes on like this. You know, I think some element of that, you know, is in our story of, you know, things are really hard right now, and also things are really amazing. The potentials ahead of us are just amazing, just unprecedented. Never seen this before ever. You know, who knows what will come out of this?
Yeah, that story you just recited reminds me of what Guy McPherson always says: pursue excellence. In other words, do the best that you can, love, and don't be attached to the outcome, right? So the horse comes back, and be thankful for it, and just accept that, yeah, maybe tomorrow won't be so great, but there's always possibility for something else. But, you know, again, it just helps put us into a good state of mind, not to be attached to the outcome. Just get out there and do it. Do something.
Yeah.
Wow. That was a powerful story, Michael. Because it helps you decouple from attachment, and also it helps us see a fundamental truth that we can't really see all the unintended consequences of a given event, right? Unintended negative consequences, unintended positive consequences. So the old man simply took the perspective, you know, I don't know, you know, I'm withholding judgment. And then that makes me think of another thing, which is that we don't necessarily have to have one single story, right? I'm kind of contradicting myself because, you know, up until now I've been saying, hey, we need one single story that just like really inspires everybody. But in talking with Guy McPherson yesterday, he got really inspired by the story of shutting down nuclear power plants, right? Because that would help save life on Earth. Other people are going to be interested in shutting down nuclear power plants because it'll help humans, right? Guy is primarily concerned with non-humans forms of life. And so do we have to have the same exact story for everyone? It's just an open question. And part of my answer to that, I'll tell yet another story. It's a really short one. So there's somebody walking along this big construction site, right? Hundreds of years ago. And there at the construction site, there's this guy who's laying bricks. And he asks the guy, what are you doing? The guy says, well, I'm laying bricks. All right. He keeps moving along the construction site, gets to another guy who's also laying bricks. And he asks him, what are you doing? He says, I'm building a wall. All right, cool. Keeps walking, comes to a third guy who's also laying bricks. You know, from the outside perspective, it looks like these three guys are doing exactly the same thing. He asks the third guy, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building a cathedral. So you see, each of the three bricklayers has a different story going on in their own head, but each of the stories enables them to do exactly the same thing. Or is it? Is the guy who's building a cathedral putting that into his work, whereas the guy who's just laying bricks, you know, look, they pay me so much per hour to lay bricks, I'm laying bricks, right? So anyway, there's multiple dimensions to this whole thing, but I'm just kind of throwing open the question. Do we need one story? Do we need multiple? As long as the story, even if there are multiple stories, as long as they get humanity orchestrated in the right direction, right? You know, c'est la vie.
That's a great point, Jamin. And that reminds me of something else, an idea I could just drop real quickly that we've talked about before, called hyperobjects. You know, there's a book out there right now. I haven't actually read it yet, but the basic idea is pretty easy to portray, that we live in a time right now of hyperobjects, meaning that there's these really big things emerging in our evolution. Things like ecological collapse, which has been emerging for, you know, to our awareness for decades, you know, since basically, you know, the late 1960s, 1970s, you know, it's become into our collective awareness of this really massive thing called ecological crisis. And it's been taking us decades to even get a sense. Still, some people don't even know if it's real. Some people are like still debating whether this is really happening or who or how it's happening or like where it's happening, or there's like all these, this is so complicated. There's all these elements that none of us can really see the whole thing. And that's why it's called a hyper object. It's almost like these like giant planets. You're looking at it and all you can see is like, one part of it. We can't even tell what it is. It reminds you of that story of the blind men who come into the dark room with an elephant and they've never seen an elephant before, and they start feeling around, and one blind guy's feeling the foot and he thinks it's a tree, and the other guy's feeling the tail and he thinks it's a rope, and the other guy is feeling the ear and he thinks it's a leaf or whatever. Like so all of us on the planet right now are trying to like deal with these hyper objects, and there's more than one type of hyper object. There's ecological crisis, and then none of us knows what it is. None of us can predict where it's going to go. And we have a lot of these hyper objects right now floating around our society, and since we can't see them clearly, we at least need good stories about them. We at least need to have a story about what it is. Like the cathedral element. Well, if we're going to be dealing with these hyper objects, let's at least say we're dealing with them to make a cathedral. Why not? Let's make a cathedral out of it.
A cathedral of life and diversity and sustainability and love and unity. That's it. So
the word that you used, Jamin, I just want to bring it back to the radar, was orchestrated. Radical orchestrated collective intelligence. That's what your whole process mapping does. Every one of us is playing an instrument, but unless it's orchestrated, it's a lot of noise. But this whole initiative can bring that harmony and as an orchestra.
Exactly. That's absolutely crucial, is the orchestration. And in fact, one of my big thesis plural, is that radical collective intelligence can grow so intelligent that it can actually, through not necessarily big, heavy-handed physical actions in the world, but what do we call them, Gaio? Trim tab, the trim tabs for the rudders and whatnot. If we can trim tab orchestrate with delicate touches here, there, and everywhere, putting out the right memes, putting out the right, launching the right movements, like to refreeze the Arctic, we can orchestrate humanity waking up in a very, peaceful, compassionate, non-destructive way that will, ultimately result in humanity moving in the right direction as a whole, even though different individuals within humanity may be operating on very different stories, just like the 3 different bricklayers, right? So orchestration is absolutely key, and I believe it's going to take a massively higher form of intelligence, radical collective intelligence, for example, to pull it off. Because in order to trim tab orchestrate something so phenomenally complex with so many hyper objects, as planet Earth with 7.5 billion of us, whatever trim tabbing you're going to do has to have a view of the whole and the impacts of the trim tabbing. And, that's largely what the global holistic model and the optimization layer seeks to be, is this essentially crystal ball that if you trim tab here, there, and there in this combination, varouche, these will be the effects, just like the effects of the horse leaving on that man's life. If he had had a crystal ball, he could have seen boom, 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 boom. Oh, it was a good thing that the horse went away. It was a good thing that the horse brought back poison fruit. It's a good thing my son ate it. It's a good thing he got sick but didn't die, blah, 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 and so on, right? So it all kind of fits together. And orchestration, we talk about divine orchestration. This would be a very human orchestration, but enabled and empowered by a vastly higher form of intelligence, which at its roots is human, but goes through stages of artificial intelligence development, bringing humanity together in these creative, radical ways. So anyway, orchestration is a big part of, not, if not the story, a story.
I just want to clarify too, Jamin, that the trim tab idea comes from Buckminster Fuller. Some notion he had come up with decades ago, referring to on a sailboat, you have the rudder. It allows you to navigate. And on some boats, there's a little tiny, like there's like a mini rudder on the rudder. That's called the trim tab. This is this little tiny thing that moves. And sometimes sailors will use that just to make like just a very, very minor adjustment in the navigation of things. That over the course of, if you're sailing for 1,000 miles, that little tiny movement can mean a lot of difference later on. And that he was suggesting that we just need trim tab ideas in how we approach this. Sometimes it doesn't take a really great change, and it takes very, very, very small changes to accomplish these, in navigating where we're going.
Yeah, because very small changes can add up to very big effects. But then, of course, you need the right model. You need the right crystal ball to see the connection between small changes and big effects. And that's where the global holistic model comes in. Wow, what a rich conversation. And I just want to say, as part of this unfolding story, the bigger story of everything that we're doing together, is simply by blocking off on the calendar these 1 hour chunks of time to say, hey, let's talk about a new story for humanity, without really too much prepared. We just showed up and the collective intelligence amongst us emerges. That's really exciting and really powerful, because I'm blown away by what we're accomplishing together. And I just wanted to rock on and continue. All righty. Well, with that, I'm going to give you gentlemen the last words. I'll go on mute. Any quick wrap-up comments, ideas, etc.?
Well, thanks again, Jamin. And I'm always, inspired. What's that corny song? You guys sort of are the wind beneath my wings kind of thing, to, try something radical and keep pushing forward. So thanks again. See you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miles.
Yeah, I'll say thank you, and really enjoyed the conversation, and glad I could contribute something, and think we're on the right track. So I'm really happy to be here and help. Thanks.
Wonderful. Great to have you with us, Adam. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, likewise, everyone, thank you for showing up and co-creating this new story together. Let's keep doing it.
Absolutely. Every Tuesday, you know the schedule. 10 to 11 Pacific time, refreezing the Arctic. 11 to 12, radical collective intelligence. And 12 to 1, news story for humanity. And we can add to that repertoire. So, but this is I think we've got a really good foundation. All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks, everyone, for participating. And we'll see you all next time. And if anybody wants to hang out for an offline discussion, feel free to hang out. I'll be hanging out for a few minutes myself, and we can chat about whatever. So I'm going to stop recording now, and then I'll hang out. Okay. Thanks, everybody.